Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Mid-South Wrestling Review Series for September 21st, 1985. Sorry that we've been delayed in getting to the series, but life has been chaotic for the past couple of weeks. Anyway, we move close to the end of what's available on the network. I don't really understand why the UWF stuff isn't available, but it isn't, and so we're going to have to search on file sharing sites and all that for that. But Perez and Cooley versus Gray and the Nightmare. Jerry Gray and the Nightmare are a relatively new team for this particular area. Jerry Gray has a guy who really is a guy who is really quite a talented individual who, in my opinion, never got his just due. And so we're going to see heavy tag team stuff this week. Perez and Cooley, of course, your tag team champions. Cooley Perez manages to get a few hip tosses off and several tags there. Hard shots by Perez as he manages to go off against the Nightmare. And of course, the Nightmare's taking the mask off. He's up and over, looking. I actually think he looked bigger with the mask on, but Perez manages to get a drop kick under the chin. I don't know why they did the mask off thing here in this point, but anyway, a tag off to Wendell Cooley. Cooley comes in, works over the arm of the Nightmare, and again, kind of stays on the arm. Arm bars quite crimped up. Honestly, I think the Nightmare character is over by this point by taking the mask off. I think it loses a lot with that. Anyway, dive into the corner. Face first into the buckle goes Cooley. The heels take over. Gray and the Nightmare take over for several minutes here. Choke out over the bottom rope. Jerry Gray, again, a guy who never really got his just due. Hard shots, though, by Gray, and he manages to do the best he can. And hard shots there. Nightmare comes back in, hits the press slam that he's known for. A little less impressive now that guys like Humongous are part of the promotion. And I think this is something that plagued Mid-South in late 85, early 86. There were a lot of guys that were very, very big and looked the same. And so it kind of got, the power game got a little overdone at this particular point. Of course, by 87, the promotion's gone. I wish there was more footage of 1976 to 80 available in the Mid-South genre, but that's not there. Obviously going to try and touch on, 86, 87 in default, but anyway, needless to say, kind of slows the match down for several minutes. Jerry Gray takes the majority of the heat in the match, and, chin locks, wrist locks, top wrist locks, and the like. The attempted tag off. Meanwhile, Nightmare comes back in, gets the shots there under the chin, and again, there's where it goes. Clearinghouse is Al Perez, who comes back in. Perez, the guy again, another guy who I don't necessarily think got as much of a role as he should have. German suplex, which for the time was a big move in 1985. Not that it hadn't been done, but you saw more German suplexes and suplexes in general in the area of Japan. Anyway, Nightmare goes for the pile driver. Finds himself on the receiving end of a double drop kick for his trouble. Jerry Gray left alone. Big back body drop on Gray. Gray manages to get himself all tied up. Bulldog out of the corner by Perez, or by Cooley, and he takes the fall on his opponent. Then we go to the next match, Paul Brown against Hacksaw Butch Reed. Reed passing away within the last 24 hours at the age of 66, having several heart attacks in the middle of things, unfortunately for him. So rest in peace to him, and condolences to his family. But he is still looking really good here in 1985, shrugging off his adversary here. Snapmares him over, drops the knee right across the exposed arm. Not a big deal, but big enough for Reed. Reed, former tag team champion with multiple partners, former multi-time North American champion, guy feuded with a Junkyard Dog, probably 1985-86. a pretty big deal for Butch Reed. Reed, of course, leaves for the WWF, I believe, in '87. We see that match kind of break down a little bit further. Uh, Shoulder tackle out of the corner by Reed. Reed manages to use his power wherever he can. This match no different. Again with the press slam. Interesting that so many guys in this era, probably about 5 or 6 guys, have press slams as part of their arsenal. Can't imagine that Bill Watts was too terribly excited about that. But Reed gets a win with his. Humongous and the Barbarian up next against Constance and Ashley. Enhancement talent. Not going to be a very long match, as one can imagine there. Of course, Humongous and the Barbarian use their power early, going rip and roaring, kind of almost like a pre-Road Warriors type vibe to them, as they just kind of run through their opponents pretty aggressively, shoulder tackles, all of that. We see Sir Oliver Humberdick willing to kind of watch on from the outside, big body slam, and then the second rope elbow on the inside by the Barbarian. Barbarian still hasn't found his maiden run. Still a tag team guy for the majority of his career. He would, of course, find that probably around 1987 with the Powers of Pain, Warlord and the Barbarian in the Crockett territory. I think it's 87. Jake Roberts comes in, though, finally attacking the Barbarian post-match, and kind of their alliance finally breaks down. Don't know if a feud between the two of them ever completely materialized. Big clothesline by Roberts. Roberts not having any of that. Meanwhile, Humongous waits a few minutes, double team on Roberts. Roberts, obviously, as the new babyface, gets beat down. What I like about this, though, is he's new enough to being a babyface that there's several minutes where he's getting double teamed, including a full Nelson by the Barbarian and the like, and very few people come out to help him. Finally, Jim Duggan comes out to help him with a steel chair. But there's about 2.5 minutes where Roberts is beat down, and then he finally has a friend at the last moment. Bruiser Bob Sweetan and Ken Glover. Sweetan, as I've mentioned, not a person I like personally. He victimized children and adults. Nothing but a bully all the way around, away from the ring, and that's well documented. He has passed away, so the world is a better place as a result. And anyway, but he manages to have some power with Glover. Glover, though, does grab and cinch up on a headlock with him. Back suplex by Sweetan. Sweetan, most notably for people that care, the instructor, or one of the instructors of Bob Holly, Hardcore Holly. I learned that myself listening to a podcast a couple of weeks ago. I did not know that there was a tie-in there, but I learned about that, and always good to learn new things. Anyway, Sweetan manages several hard shots, and Glover comes back with forearms of his own, but in comparison to Sweetan, it's kind of like, relating pork ribs to Spam. Sweetan obviously much more powerful and decisive. Big air raid splash, 1, 2, 3. Sweetan gets a victory, and there we go. Dr. Death Steve Williams up next, facing off against Dick Murdoch. What an interesting combination of a match that is. To talk about a hoss fight, right? Needless to say, Williams and Murdoch kind of going at it pretty aggressively. The North American Championship on the line. Murdoch not necessarily sure he wants to deal with people on the outside, including Sweetan, but Murdoch, Captain Redneck, says he's willing to, fight Williams. Probably to this point, I would imagine, one of the bigger matches for Steve Williams, certainly as a single in the area, maybe in his career to that point. The North American Championship being on the line. Both guys lock up, double hoss fight, and Williams comes out with a bit of an advantage because of his power and being younger. But old Tricky Dicky Murdoch manages to take the man down. Butch Reed, there to second Murdoch, I would assume. Sweetan there to second Williams, and kind of an interesting run. Anyway, um, lots of mat wrestling. Murdoch coming out a little bit ahead there. Worth going out of your way to see if you like storytelling in matches, if you like matches that have kind of a slower build to them, but they're both powerful guys because there's good snap to the work they do when they are offensive, but they always return to telling a good story body wise. I think that's one thing among many that's missing 35 years later is the storytelling of a guy, you know, over the last, let's just round off and say 4 decades. Storytelling in 1981 versus 2021 is such a dead art. I mean, it is dead, except for guys who study older footage. And I would say that's maybe 20% of locker room. I don't think the majority of locker rooms care now about, uh, telling decent stories. If they do, they certainly aren't showing it in the natural progression of things. Anyway, Williams is on the receiving end of a couple of elbows from his adversary. Anyway, Murdoch takes down Williams, kind of lays on him, uses the weight advantage, uses his experience advantage, lays on him for a good few minutes. Williams, though, gets back to his feet, drives the man back into the corner, lays down on him again with the inverted um, front face lock. Back elbow by Williams. Williams not wanting none of this and manages to do everything he can. Kind of chokes the man out and ultimately, we kind of see Williams with a inverted choke there and then the chin lock. Uh, Murdoch comes back to his feet, cuts the man off, hits a hard shot, big attempted body slam, and he finally does get it off. Does Williams? Williams with the attempted 3-point stance tackle. He goes to the outside. Sweetan, he gets a few offensive maneuvers on Williams, or tries to bring Williams back to his feet. Referee goes down in the foray of the fray. Brainbuster attempt uh, by Murdoch. Sweetan comes in, tries to interfere. Butch Reed comes in and cuts Sweetan off. So that kind of continues going there. Butch Reed and Williams now going at it. Talk about another hoss fight. The Murdoch's still down. Referee is not back to his feet yet. Anyway, he goes after Butch Reed, and he's less than happy about that. Murdoch goes after everybody. He's 3-on-1 and everybody. And so obviously Murdoch gets beat up because the numbers are there with Williams and Sweetan, but needless to say, that kind of gets broken up by some baby faces from the back. Then we go to El Casario with Skandor Akbar against Jimmy Backlund. Obviously, that is a match to build up Casario once again. They've got about 10 minutes left in the program and another match to do, so this is very short. Martial arts primarily by Corsario. Corsario not impressed with Backlund by this point, although there's not much to be impressed by the guy with at this point either. Big power slam by Corsario. He manages to go for the pinfall and all of that again. 1, 2, 3. Corsario gets the win. Mantell and Dundee versus Styles and who is his other nifty run there? Styles and Pat Rose. Rose has kind of come out and basically we see Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert kind of getting into it with Bill Dundee because of Dundee's involvement in his match the previous week, and so eventually, obviously, Williams and Dundee is going to be there at some point. Although Hot Stuff does bring him a bit of a gift, which is a hot pink jacket, with only a couple of minutes remaining in the program. This obviously is a one-sided squash match, and we do have a special tribute music video to the Fantastics, so we're trying to get them over again. Interesting to me that Watts is one of the guys that uses music videos a lot, but he'll use music video hype around guys who, you know, have been there before. That's a little different. Anyway, the baby faces take over on Dundee for a little bit. Doesn't last very long. Mantell comes back in. He uses more power. So the combination of speed and power, Mantell and Dundee is pretty noticeable. When things need to go back their way, it's Mantell that brings it that way. Dundee, kind of like a pit bull, though, pounding away on his adversaries wherever he can. Mantell comes back in a bit more brutish, a bit more methodical. So they are a good team in that regard, and they obviously get the victory there. The music video by the Fantastics is how we close the program. We'll be back to finish out the month of September, and we'll be back with more right after this.